The U.S. Defiant drifted through the amber nebula clouds of the Orient sector, its battle-scarred hull telling stories of a dozen victories that had no business being wins. Captain Jack Reynolds stood at his command station, one hand resting on the weathered steel railing that his predecessors had gripped in similar moments of tension. The bridge crew worked in practiced silence, broken only by the soft chirp of sensor readings and status updates. Reactor efficiency at 64%. Captain, reported Lieutenant Sarah Martinez from engineering, her voice tight with concern. That last rescue mission did a number on our coolant systems. Reynolds nodded, running a hand through his graying hair. At 45, he was young for a cruiser captain, but space warfare had a way of accelerating careers and aging. Keep her steady, Lieutenant. We just need to make it to Outpost 7 for repairs. The rescue mission had been worth it, though. They'd pulled 300 colonists off New Helena before the planet's magnetic field collapse. The Defiant wasn't designed for evacuation ops, but Reynolds had learned long ago that human ships, like their crews, performed best when pushing beyond their intended limits. Sir, the sharp call came from Ensign Chen at Tactical. Multiple quantum signatures detected. Large vessels emerging. 15. No, 16 contacts. The bridge temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Everyone knew only one species in this sector had perfected quantum jump technology to that level. The Sk'Thari battle fleet materialized around them like crystalline predators emerging from deep waters. Their ships were works of art, organic curves of transparent metal, and pulsing energy conduits that made human vessels look like crude industrial tools in comparison. The smallest of their ships massed twice the Defiant's weight. The largest dwarfed the human cruiser like a whale beside a minnow. They're surrounding us in a theta pattern, sir, reported Chen, her fingers dancing across the tactical display. Classic containment formation. Reynolds felt a familiar calm settle over him. The same stillness he learned as a boy hunting in Montana's wilderness. When you're outsized and outgunned, patience becomes your best weapon. Communications incoming, announced Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, his dark eyes narrowing at his station. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, sir, in English. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with a voice that sounded like breaking glass arranged into words. Human vessel, you have entered space claimed by the Sk'Thari Dominion. Your primitive craft is surrounded. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction. Reynolds caught his crew exchanging glances. The Sk'Thari were known for their technological superiority and their complete disdain for younger species. Humanity's brief century of space travel was barely a blink compared to their millennia of interstellar dominance. Sir, Rodriguez whispered, I'm picking up their tactical channels. They're laughing at us, calling us debris with delusions of adequacy. A small smile tugged at Reynolds' lips. You know what your great-grandfather used to tell me about your family's ranch in Texas, Rodriguez. The comms officer blinked at the apparent non-sequitur. Sir, he said the most dangerous bull wasn't the biggest one. It was always the scared-up old one that looked like it had no business still being alive. Reynolds straightened his uniform jacket. Ensign Chen, bring all weapons to standby, but keep them powered down. Martinez, I want every scrap of power you can give me on standby, but show them a reactor reading at 30% and falling. Understanding dawned on his crew's faces. The Defiant might look like a battered relic, but every scar on her hull had taught them something. Every patch of mismatched armor plating held a lesson written in plasma fire and hard vacuum. Rodriguez, open a channel. Reynolds waited for the nod, then spoke with deliberate weariness. Sk'Thari vessel, this is Captain Jack Reynolds of the U.S. Defiant. We are experiencing significant system failures from our last engagement. Request time to stabilize our reactor before powering down. The crystalline laughter came back immediately. Granted, human. We would not want your primitive reactor to destabilize. It would deny us the pleasure of demonstrating proper space warfare techniques to your species. Reynolds muted the channel and turned to his crew. Battle stations. Quietly. Let's show them how dangerous primitive can be. The bridge of the U.S. Defiant hummed with suppressed tension as the Scatheri fleet closed in. Their crystalline ships caught the nebula's light, refracting it in patterns that would have been beautiful if they weren't so deadly. Captain Reynolds watched through narrowed eyes as his tactical display showed the alien vessels moving into what they considered optimal capture positions. "They're deploying boarding shuttles, sir," Ensign Chen reported, her fingers hovering over the weapons console. 6 of them, launching from their frigate escorts. Reynolds nodded slowly. "Martinez, how's our failing reactor doing?" "Putting on quite a show, Captain," the engineer replied with a hint of pride. "I've got the containment field fluctuating just enough to make them nervous. As far as their sensors can tell, we're barely holding together." She paused, then added with a grin, "The Ghost protocol is working perfectly. Our weapon systems are reading as offline and damage." The Ghost protocol had been developed after humanity's first devastating encounters with technologically superior species. It was amazing what you could accomplish with carefully modulated energy signatures and a thorough understanding of how alien sensors worked. The Defiant wasn't just showing false readings, it was telling a story, one that the Scatheri's arrogance made them all too willing to believe. "Sir," Rodriguez cut in, "they're broadcasting again." "Let's hear it." The crystalline voice filled the bridge once more. "Human vessel, your reactor instabilities are concerning. For the safety of all involved, we will expedite the boarding process. Your crew will be treated according to Dominion protocols for primitive species rehabilitation." Reynolds caught Lieutenant Commander Davis, his XO, rolling her eyes. The Scatheri's patronizing tone was starting to grate on everyone's nerves. "Boarding shuttles at 30 seconds to contact," Chen updated. Sir, they're not even running shields. They consider us completely neutralized." "Primitive species rehabilitation," Reynolds mused aloud. "Rodriguez, what exactly does that entail, according to their tactical chatter?" The communications officer's face darkened. "They're discussing which rehabilitation colonies could use manual laborers, sir. Apparently, our primitive brains are best suited for simple physical tasks." "Well then," Reynolds straightened in his chair, "let's expand their educational horizons. Chen, target solutions. Plotted and ready, sir. Ghost protocol can drop on your mark. Martinez, real power levels. Reactor at 89% and holding steady. All weapons systems hot." Reynolds allowed himself a predatory smile. "Execute Operation Phantom Fleet on my mark." He keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for immediate action." The Scatheri boarding shuttles were nearly alongside now. On their sensors, the Defiant would appear as a dying vessel, its weapon systems offline, its reactor barely contained. The perfect prey. Now, the transformation was instant and devastating. The Ghost protocol dropped, revealing the Defiant's true nature. Weapon ports that had appeared damaged burst to life, targeting systems that had read as offline locked onto multiple targets simultaneously. But the real surprise came from the holographic projectors. To the Scatheri sensors, it suddenly appeared as if 3 additional human cruisers had decloaked around the Defiant. The holograms were sophisticated enough to fool even their advanced scanning technology, projecting false energy signatures, phantom weapon systems, and ghost reactor cores. Chaos erupted across the enemy fleet. The boarding shuttles, caught completely exposed, never stood a chance. The Defiant's actual weapons, very real and very functional, cut through them with surgical precision. "Multiple direct hits," Chen reported with satisfaction. "All boarding shuttles neutralized. Enemy fleet is breaking formation, attempting to compensate for the new threats." Reynolds watched as the Scatheri ships scrambled to respond to an enemy that had suddenly quadrupled in number. Their perfect formation dissolved into confusion as captains tried to decide which targets were real and which were phantoms. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, "they're flooding their command channels." Complete chaos. They can't agree on which ships to target. Time to educate them about another human innovation, Reynolds declared. All batteries, commence firing. Show them why Earth's navies learned to fight in 3 dimensions long before we reached space. The Defiant's guns roared to life, and the real battle began. The Defiant's rotating weapons platform spun up with a deep mechanical thrum that vibrated through the hull. To the Scatheri, whose ships relied on fixed-position energy weapons, the sight must have been bewildering. A seemingly primitive design choice that was about to prove devastatingly effective. Modular weapon pods fully charged, Captain, Chen reported, her fingers dancing across the tactical display. All 3 arrays showing green. Permission to initiate Operation Hornet's Nest. Reynolds leaned forward in his command chair, studying the enemy formation as it tried to regroup. Execute. Let's show them why humanity never abandoned kinetic warfare. The weapon pods detached from the Defiant's hull with precise bursts from their maneuvering thrusters. Each one was essentially a miniature gunship, packed with railguns and missile launchers. While energy weapons were effective, humanity had learned long ago never to rely on a single type of armament. Enemy vessels attempting to lock onto our Phantom signatures, Rodriguez called out. Their targeting systems are struggling to distinguish real threats from holograms. The first salvo from the Defiant's main guns caught 2 Scatheri frigates by surprise. The rotating platform allowed the human ship to maintain constant fire while presenting a minimal profile, a technique perfected by helicopter gunships centuries ago. The crystalline hulls of the alien vessels, designed to disperse energy weapons, proved surprisingly vulnerable to good old-fashioned tungsten slugs traveling at relativistic speeds. Direct hits on targets Alpha and Bravo. Chen's voice carried a note of fierce satisfaction. Their port sections are venting atmosphere. They're trying to compensate, but their point defense systems were calibrated for energy weapons, not solid projectiles. The weapon pods had reached their attack positions, creating a 3-dimensional kill box around the nearest Scatheri cruiser. The alien vessel, still focused on the Defiant and its Phantom images, never saw the attack coming from its blind spots. Pod 1. Engaging. Chen narrated as the battle unfolded. Pods 2 and 3. Commencing attack runs. Multiple impacts confirmed. Their shield geometry wasn't designed for attacks from these angles. Reynolds watched as the enemy cruiser's shields flickered and failed under the onslaught. The Scatheri had developed their defensive technology to deal with head-on engagements, never expecting an enemy to attack from seemingly impossible positions with obsolete weaponry. Sir, Martinez cut in from engineering. They're trying to adapt their shields, detecting power fluctuations in their grid as they attempt to reconfigure. Too late, Reynolds muttered. Chen, execute attack pattern Delta 7. Show them why humans still study ancient Roman battle formations. The Defiant and its weapon pods moved in perfect coordination, executing a complex series of maneuvers that forced the Scatheri ships to either split their fire or leave themselves exposed. It was like watching a pack of wolves take down larger prey, each component of the attack forcing the enemy to make impossible choices. 3 more Scatheri vessels erupted in silent explosions as railgun rounds found their critical systems. The remaining ships were starting to break formation, their usual tactical doctrine falling apart in the face of an enemy that refused to fight according to their rules. Enemy communications are in chaos, Rodriguez reported with a grin. They're demanding to know how a primitive ship is outmaneuvering their entire squadron. Their admiral is quite colorful in their assessment of our ancestry. Reynolds allowed himself a small smile. Remind me to thank the Apache helicopter pilots who helped design our weapon systems. Chen, status of the weapon pods. All pods functioning at optimal levels, sir. Pod 2 reporting minor damage from debris impact, but weapons are still operational. They're in position for another attack run. The bridge crew watched as their separate weapons platforms continued to wreak havoc on the enemy formation. The Scatheri's attempts to target the pods were frustrated by their small size and incredible maneuverability. Another lesson learned from centuries of aerial combat on Earth. Sir, Davis spoke up from her XO station. The enemy flagship is moving into position. They appear to be charging their main weapon array. Reynolds nodded grimly. Good. Time to show them why humans never put all their eggs in one basket. Chen, prepare for Phase 4. Let's introduce them to the joy of electronic warfare. The Scathari flagship's approach was magnificent in its arrogance. A crystalline dreadnought twice the length of the Defiant, its hull pulsing with enough energy to vaporize a small moon. As it moved to the front of their formation, its weapon ports began to glow with an ominous purple light. "Sir," Rodriguez reported, his voice tense but controlled, "they're broadcasting again. The Admiral himself this time. Let's hear what they have to say before we ruin their day." The voice that filled the bridge was deeper than the previous transmissions, leaden with centuries of assumed superiority. "Human vessel, I am Grand Admiral Vexthor. Your primitive tactics have caused enough disruption. Surrender now, and I will consider sparing your crew from neural reconditioning." Reynolds gestured to Rodriguez to mute the transmission. "Time to launch our cyber package. Martinez, status of our Quantum AI core." "ARIA is warmed up and ready, Captain. She's been analyzing their network architecture since first contact." Martinez's fingers flew across her console. "Their quantum encryption is good, but they never expected to face an AI that evolved from Earth's own cryptography wars." Reynolds nodded. During the mid-21st century, competing AIs had fought countless digital battles across Earth's networks, evolving at a terrifying pace. ARIA was a descendant of those survivors, honed by decades of additional combat simulations. Execute Operation Digital Hydra. The effect was both instant and subtle. At first, the Scathari showed no sign of realizing their network had been compromised. ARIA slipped through their defenses like a ghost, using their own quantum communications against them. First firewall breached, Martins reported with professional satisfaction. ARIA is deploying adaptive viral algorithms. She's in their secondary systems. Primary grid access achieved. They still haven't detected the intrusion. Reynolds watched as the enemy flagship's weapon ports continued to charge. The Scathari relied heavily on their automated systems, their crews more supervisors than operators. It was about to become their greatest weakness. "Sir," Chen called out. "They're powering up their main gun. Energy readings are off the scale. Hold position," Reynolds ordered calmly. "Martinez, is ARIA in position?" "Yes, sir. She's got control of their targeting matrices and power distribution networks." "Ready on your mark." The flagship's main gun reached full charge, its crystalline structure now glowing bright enough to be painful to look at. Grand Admiral Vexthor's voice returned, smug with anticipated victory. "Witness, humans, the power of true technological superiority." Reynolds allowed himself a predatory smile. Now, the flagship fired, and its devastating beam lanced out at exactly 47 degrees off its intended target, slicing through two of its own escort vessels. Before the Scathari could react, ARIA seized control of their entire fire control network. "Beautiful," Rodriguez whispered as chaos erupted across enemy channels. Their own automated defenses are targeting each other. They're trying to shut down their systems, but ARIA is throwing up false sensor readings faster than they can process them. The bridge crew watched in professional appreciation as the alien fleet began to tear itself apart. Ships fired on phantom targets or real allies they mistook for enemies. Point defense systems activated against non-existent threats while ignoring actual dangers. "They're attempting to purge their systems," Martins reported. But ARIA anticipated that. She's fragmented herself across their network. Every time they eliminate one instance, two more appear elsewhere, just like the Hydra of ancient mythology. Reynolds keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for close-range engagement. They'll figure out they need to go manual eventually, and I want us ready when they do." The Defiant's weapon pods had regrouped, taking strategic positions around their mothership. On the tactical display, The Scatheri fleet's elegant formation had devolved into chaos as ships tried to cope with compromised systems and conflicting orders. "Sir," Davis spoke up from her XO station, "the flagship is attempting to coordinate a response using old-fashioned visual signals. They're adapting." Reynolds nodded approvingly. The Scatheri were learning, but the lesson was going to be expensive. Good. Time for Phase 5. Let's show them why humans still train for damage control scenarios that would give their engineers nightmares. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The hunters had become the hunted, and they were only beginning to realize it. The first direct hit rocked the Defiant with enough force to throw crewmen against their restraints. Emergency klaxons wailed as damage reports flooded in. A Scatheri destroyer, operating on manual controls to bypass their compromised systems, had managed to score a devastating blow to the human cruiser's port side. Direct hit to Deck 4. Martins shouted over the chaos. "Main reactor containment is fluctuating. We've lost 30% of our power grid." Reynolds gripped his command chair as another impact shuddered through the hull. The Scatheri were adapting faster than expected, reverting to manual fire control and visual targeting. Their technological advantage was starting to show again. "Seal off sections 14 through 20. Reynolds ordered. "Rear out power through the auxiliary conduits. Where's my damage control teams?" "Already moving, sir," Davis responded, her hands flying over the tactical display. "Chief Wallace has his crews split into 5 autonomous units. They're implementing Protocol Lazarus." Protocol Lazarus, named after the biblical figure who rose from the dead, was a uniquely human innovation. While other species designed their ships with centralized repair systems, humanity had learned harsh lessons from centuries of naval warfare. Every crew member was cross-trained in emergency repairs, and each section was designed to function independently if cut off from the rest of the ship. "Sir," Chen called out, her voice tight with concern. "We've lost our starboard weapons array. Port array at 40% capacity." Another hit rocked the ship. Environmental alarms screamed as multiple compartments lost atmosphere. "Getting reports from damage control teams," Davis announced. "Chief Wallace is implementing some creative solutions." Through the tactical feed, Reynolds watched as his crew demonstrated why humanity excelled at crisis management. In Section 16, a junior engineer was sealing a hull breach with emergency foam and pieces of a shattered mess hall table. 2 decks below, a medical technician who'd grown up fixing tractors was bypassing a fried power relay using components from her own medical equipment. "Sir," Chief Wallace reports he's restoring power to the starboard array. Martins reported with a note of disbelief. He's routing it through the auxiliary life support systems and 3 jury-rigged battery packs." Reynolds allowed himself a grim smile. The Scatheri designed their ships with elegant, efficient systems. Humanity designed for survival. "Enemy flagship is moving to finish us off," Chen reported. "They think we're crippled." "Are we?" Reynolds asked Martinez. The engineer's laugh was almost maniacal. "Sir, we've got 27 systems running on emergency patches, 15 jury-rigged power connections that probably violate every safety protocol in the book, and Chief Wallace says he's powering the port shield generator with something he swears isn't the cafeteria's coffee maker. But we're still in the fight." Reynolds nodded. This was humanity's true strength, the ability to adapt, to improvise, to keep fighting long past the point where any reasonable species would have surrendered. "Sir," Rodriguez cut in, picking up transmissions from the enemy flagship. They're confused. Their sensors show we should have lost all power 5 minutes ago. They can't understand how we're still operational." "Let them wonder," Reynolds replied. "Status of our weapon pods." "Pods 1 and 3 are still operational," Chen reported. "Pod 2 is damaged, but Chief Wallace says he can have it back online in 3 minutes. He's sending someone out in a repair suit to reconnect the main power coupling manually." The Defiant shuddered again as another hit connected, but this time the ship's response was different. Emergency systems kicked in smoothly, damage control teams moved with practiced efficiency, and power rerouted automatically through the jury-rigged systems that were becoming more stable by the minute. "Sir," Davis said with pride evident in her voice, "all critical systems are stabilized." Chief Wallace reports that his teams have established redundant power routes to all weapon systems. "It's not pretty, but it'll hold." Reynolds straightened in his chair. The Defiant was wounded but far from finished. Its systems were held together with the engineering equivalent of duct tape and willpower, but that had always been humanity's way, making the impossible work through sheer determination and ingenuity. "Send a message to all hands," he ordered. "The real fight is about to begin. Show them why humanity wrote the book on refusing to die." The Defiant's bridge was filled with the acrid smell of burned circuitry and emergency sealant foam as Reynolds initiated the next phase of their unconventional battle plan. The psychological warfare package had been his own addition to the ship's arsenal, drawn from humanity's long history of understanding that wars were won in the mind as much as on the battlefield. "Load historical combat footage, Program Delta," Reynolds commanded. "Rodriguez, prepare for wide-spectrum broadcast." The communications officer's eyes widened as he saw the selected footage. "Sir, are you sure? This is intense stuff. The Scatheri evolved from a hive mind species, Rodriguez. They think in patterns and uniformity. Let's show them something their collective consciousness can't process. Across every frequency, on every channel the Scatheri could receive, the Defiant began broadcasting. The transmissions started with footage from Earth's ancient battles, the chaos of Thermopylae, the desperate charge at Waterloo, the beach landing at Normandy. Then came modern warfare, guerrilla tactics, asymmetric conflicts, urban combat scenarios that defied conventional military logic. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, excitement in his voice. "Their command and control channels are showing significant disruption. Their group coordination is breaking down. The Scatheri fleet's formation, already damaged by their compromised networks, began to fragment further as individual ships started reacting differently to the psychological assault. Their hive mind heritage made them particularly vulnerable to scenes of individualistic combat decisions and chaotic warfare. Their admiral is trying to restore order," Rodriguez reported, listening to the enemy communications. "But half their ships are acting independently now. Some are advancing, others are pulling back. They can't maintain tactical cohesion." Reynolds nodded grimly. "Show them the urban warfare footage from Singapore. Then mix in the Antarctic defense scenarios." The broadcast shifted to show humans fighting in impossible conditions, soldiers advancing through burning buildings, Marines conducting underwater demolitions, pilots flying through storms that should have grounded any aircraft. Each scene demonstrated humanity's defining trait, the ability to function and even thrive in chaos. "Enemy vessels are breaking formation completely," Chen reported from Tactical. 3 destroyers are attempting to maintain their attack pattern. But the rest? "Sir, they're actually interfering with each other's firing solutions." The Defiant's next broadcast showed footage of human special forces operations, small teams accomplishing impossible missions, individual soldiers making critical decisions without waiting for orders. For the hierarchical Scatheri, it was like watching madness unfold. "Their flagship is broadcasting emergency coordination signals," Rodriguez said, unable to hide his satisfaction. "The admiral's trying to force them back into formation, but, sir, some ships are actually ignoring direct orders. They can't comprehend our combat doctrine, and it's breaking their command structure." Reynolds leaned forward in his chair. "Now show them what we learned from Earth's predators." The next transmission depicted humanity's most elite military units in action, moving with the precision of wolf packs, striking with the speed of big cats, adapting with the cunning of corvids. The Scatheri watched as their carefully structured battle plan was torn apart by an enemy that fought like their planet's apex predators. Multiple enemy vessels showing signs of combat stress, Davis reported from her station. "Their crew efficiency is dropping dramatically. They're trying to fight as individuals, but their training is entirely based on group coordination. Sir, Martinez cut in from engineering. Chief Wallace reports all our jerry-rigged systems are holding steady. We're actually performing better than standard specs on some systems thanks to his improvements. Reynolds allowed himself a tight smile. The Sktheri fleet's elegant formation had devolved into chaos, with ships firing at shadows, responding to threats that didn't exist, and struggling to coordinate with their suddenly independent-minded allies. Final broadcast package, he ordered. Show them the footage from the Battle of New Terra. As the transmission of humanity's greatest space victory began to play, Reynolds turned to his crew. All stations, prepare for decisive engagement. The enemy is scattered and confused. Time to show them why humans wrote the book on turning chaos into victory. The Defiance weapons powered up as the once mighty Sktheri fleet floundered in disarray, about to learn why humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to embrace and weaponize disorder. Initiate Project Lazarus, Reynolds commanded, his voice steady despite the stakes. Let's show them our final trick. The Defiance hull groaned as massive hydraulic systems engage, ones that had been deliberately hidden from all external scans. The Sktheri flagship, still struggling to coordinate its scattered fleet, suddenly focused all its sensors on the human vessel as warning signals began screaming across their detection grid. Structural separation in 3, 2, 1. Martinez counted down from engineering. Breaking now. To the astonished Sktheri, it appeared as if the Defiant was tearing itself apart. The ship split into 3 distinct sections, each one immediately powering up its own reactor and weapon systems. What had appeared to be a dying vessel was suddenly 3 smaller, heavily armed warships. All sections report combat ready, Chen announced, her fingers dancing across the tactical display. Section 2 and 3 confirming autonomous control. Reynolds watched as his ship demonstrated the culmination of humanity's adaptive warfare doctrine. The Defiant's 3 sections, each essentially a corvette-sized warship, moved with perfect coordination, executing attack patterns that would have been impossible for a single vessel. Sir, Rodriguez called out, barely containing his excitement. The Sktheri, they're panicking. Their tactical doctrine has no protocol for this. The Admiral is demanding to know how we've violated the laws of naval architecture. The Sktheri fleet's remaining formation dissolved completely as they tried to track 3 targets where one had been before. Their sensors, calibrated to detect standard ship configurations, struggled to maintain locks on vessels that technically shouldn't exist. Section 2, engage their port flank, Reynolds ordered. Section 3, harass their rear guard. We'll take the flagship. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Sktheri had encountered in their millennia of space warfare. The Defiant sections moved like pack hunters, each one striking from different angles, drawing fire and creating openings for the others to exploit. Multiple direct hits on enemy vessels, Chen reported. They can't establish effective firing solutions. Their targeting computers are designed for capital ship engagement. Our sections are too small and fast. The Sktheri flagship, a vessel that could have easily destroyed the Defiant in a conventional battle, now found itself surrounded by 3 smaller targets that refused to follow any rational combat doctrine. When it focused its main guns on one section, the others would strike its flanks. When it tried to withdraw to a safer distance, the sections would close in aggressive attack runs that no sane commander would attempt. Section 3 reporting critical hit on the flagship's primary weapon array, Davis announced. Section 2 has disabled their starboard engines. They're losing maneuverability. Reynolds watched as his fragmented ship systematically dismantled the enemy flagship. The Sktheri's superior technology meant nothing in the face of tactics they couldn't comprehend. Their mighty dreadnought, designed to duel with other capital ships, had no answer for 3 smaller vessels that attacked like a wolf pack that had scented blood. Sir, Rodriguez intercepted communication from their flagship, the Admiral. He's ordering a full retreat. Wait, only half their ships are acknowledging. The others are still trying to engage us individually. Their command structure has completely broken down, Davis observed. They can't coordinate a retreat without consensus. The bridge crew watched as the once proud Scatheri fleet devolved into complete chaos. Some ships attempted to flee, others continued fighting without any coherent strategy, and the flagship itself wallowed helplessly as its crew argued about the impossible situation they faced. All sections, Reynolds commanded, execute final attack pattern. Target their flagship's command center. Let's end this. The Defiant's 3 sections moved in perfect synchronization, years of drilling and simulation paying off in a display of coordination that would have been impossible for most species. They struck from 3 different vectors, their weapons finding weak points that only became vulnerable when the flagship tried to defend against multiple attacks simultaneously. The Scatheri flagship's bridge erupted in a spectacular explosion, its crystalline hull shattering like a massive geode struck by a hammer. As emergency pods launched from the dying vessel, Reynolds allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Send to all sections," he ordered. "Well done. Time to show them how humans handle surrender negotiations." The aftermath of the battle hung in space like a crystalline graveyard. Shattered fragments of Scatheri vessels caught the nebula's light, creating an eerily beautiful display against the cosmic backdrop. The Defiant's 3 sections had reunited, locking together with precision that belied their battle damage. Final count, Chen reported from Tactical. 13 Scatheri vessels destroyed or disabled. 2 executing full retreat, broadcasting on all frequencies. She paused, checking her readings. "They're transmitting in the clear, sir. No encryption." Reynolds nodded, understanding the significance. The Scatheri weren't just retreating. They were ensuring every listening post and monitoring station in the sector would hear what happened. "Play the transmission," he ordered. The bridge speakers crackled with multiple voices, all speaking with an urgency that shattered their usual crystalline harmony. "Warning to all Dominion vessels. Avoid engagement with human warships at all costs. They fight with methods that defy tactical analysis. Their technology is primitive, but they wield it with impossible efficiency. Most disturbing of all, they fight alone. Each of their crew members makes independent decisions, yet somehow maintains unit cohesion. They are not bound by conventional military doctrine. Retreat and report if encountered." Rodriguez couldn't hide his grin. "Sir, they're broadcasting detailed scans of our battle. Every Scatheri ship in the sector will know what happened here." "Good," Reynolds replied, standing from his command chair. "Lieutenant Martinez, status of our jury-rigged systems." Chief Wallace reports that some of his improvements actually outperform our original specifications, sir. He's requesting permission to keep several of the modifications permanent. She paused, checking another reading. Though he admits the coffee maker might need to be returned to the mess hall eventually. A chuckle rippled through the bridge crew, tension finally breaking. Reynolds moved to the tactical display, studying the aftermath of their victory. Status of the enemy survivors. "Escape pods are maintaining position," Chen reported, including one containing their admiral, according to IFF signals. They're requesting permission to be taken aboard, sir." Reynolds smiled. "Well, let's show them another human tradition. Treating surrendered enemies with respect. Davis, prepare a reception party. Make sure medical is ready for any injured." As the crew executed their orders, Rodriguez spoke up again. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from multiple Scatheri outposts. They're requesting immediate peace talks. Their high command is offering to recognize all human territorial claims in the sector." "Send them our coordinates," Reynolds replied. "Tell them we'll be happy to discuss terms once we've tended to their surviving crew members." He turned to his XO. "Davis, make sure our guests are comfortable. I want them to see exactly how humans treat their prisoners." "Aye, sir. Should I have the chef prepare something special? Tell him to make his best effort at accommodating their dietary needs, and have someone clean up the mess hall. We did steal their coffee maker for parts after all." The bridge crew shared another laugh, the kind that only comes after surviving impossible odds. Through the view screen, they could see the escape pods being carefully tractored toward the Defiant's hull. "Sir," Martin is called out one final time. Message from Chief Wallace. He says that once we're done showing the Scatheri our hospitality, he has some ideas about improving our weapon systems based on what we learned today. Something about combining their crystal technology with our rotating platforms. Reynolds nodded, pride evident in his expression. Innovation born from adversity. Humanity's greatest strength. Send to all hands. Outstanding work today. Let's show our guests why humans are just as formidable in peace as we are in war. As the Defiant began rescue operations, the two retreating Scatheri ships disappeared into quantum space, carrying with them a message that would soon spread throughout their empire. Beware the humans. They fought like no other species in known space, not with overwhelming force or superior technology, but with an unpredictability and adaptability that made them dangerous beyond conventional measure. The legend of the U.S. Defiant was born that day, but its greatest victory wasn't in the ships it destroyed or the battle it won. It was in teaching the Scatheri, and by extension, the galaxy, that humanity's greatest weapon had never been its technology, but its indomitable spirit and endless capacity for adaptation.